Welcome to this episode on the Health and Happiness Show, where it's my mission to change your mindset so that you can live a healthy and happier life. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's go. Hey guys, it's Ollie here, and welcome back to another episode on the Health and Happiness Show. Today we are joined by a very special guest. He is a doctor of physical therapy who helps people get out of pain, get their body moving, and teaches them how to move it right. I personally call him Mr. Mobility, and his Instagram page has become my go-to for all things mobility related, both for myself and for my academy clients. It is therefore with great pleasure that I welcome and introduce to the show Ben Torres. Ben, how are you, my friend?
Hey, appreciate that introduction, man. That was great. That was crisp. I like it. But
Mr.
I'm doing well.
Mobility.
It's funny. The other day, somebody tagged me on a post. It might have even been you. I can't remember. But somebody tagged me and was like, yeah, Mr. Mobility or the Mobility Master. And I was like, hashtag Mobility Master. But I tagged another gentleman, Dr. Jacob, who's a big name as well, and not necessarily a big name as well, but he's a name in terms of mobility. And that guy has some serious mobility. I mean, every time I put up a mobility challenge, this guy's like, oh yeah, it was easy, and like shows a harder version of it. I'm like, what? How did you do that? So I guess I'm not the only Mr. Mobility.
Well, that's the tagline for yourself today anyway. So I want to dive straight into it. And
Mhm.
this is, I guess, a kind of a personal question, but it'll
Yeah,
be
hit me.
applicable for the listeners as well, in a sense of throughout my sort of training experience. I've been training maybe 6-7 years, and within that time I've made every mistake in the book. I've lifted with ego, I've been belly big balls, putting way too much weight on the plate,
Yep.
never prioritized my mobility. And it was only until I got injured did I then actually look at it from that angle. And you have all of these different professionals. You've got physiotherapists, you've got chiropractors, you've got
Mhm.
masseuse.
Mhm.
And I think this will be a good question for the listeners in the sense of where should people start, right? Like
Mhm.
I've come across your page and I love your page. I literally send every single one of my clients to follow your page, literally.
I
But
love it.
like, and out of everything that I've experienced, in terms of what I've tried, and I've tried everything. Personally, for me, it's been mobility which has had the greatest impact on my own sort of health and
Mhm.
well-being in a training sense. So, what's the sort of classification between all different types, and is there a system in terms of what people should start with to begin with, or how does it work?
Great question. So there is so many different avenues that you could take that question. And when you look at the field in general of healthcare practitioners that work on the movement system, right? That's what we call it, the movement system. And that really comes down to athletic trainers, physical therapists, chiropractors, osteopaths. Those are the big ones. We treat the movement system. I don't like to call it the musculoskeletal system because there's so many more components to that. But when you look at those different avenues, each has their own niche, right? A PT really works on particularly rehabilitating the body to get back to moving correctly. An athletic trainer particularly works on athletic improvement, explosiveness, strength training. Chiropractic has a focus on the spine itself, the neuromuscular system, and how all things kind of come down into alignment. And then an osteopath is particularly hands-on and also has the ability to prescribe medicine. So there are these different avenues. I certainly always recommend go with the most conservative approaches to begin with. And what I mean by that is do the things that are not permanent first. So if you just develop a basic routine of movement and mobility, it can do so much for you. And then if you need more than that, if you need a specific guidance, if you need professional work, if you need maybe that next level that an osteopath would recommend for imaging or medications, okay, you can go that route. But after you've done that, you can't go back. So start on the easy thing. For me, it's all about getting in a habit of movement. And if that is literally 3 minutes in the morning where you practice some gentle low back stretches, beautiful. I love it. Everybody's going to start at a different plane, but just find something that is habitual, something that you can enjoy and recreate and not look at it in a negative sense. but rather as something you're giving back to your body. So hopefully that kind of answered that question there. But
Yeah,
to me,
100%.
all about the basics for sure.
I think, I mean, it certainly correlates into a weight loss sense, but everything's about the basics. Like, I don't know what it's like where you are, but here there's all of these fads, whether it's keto or whether it's,
Oh my gosh,
like,
it's crazy.
now these aren't necessarily fads, but obviously they're marketed as a fad, booties and all of these things. And I think when it comes to weight loss, it's just straight like up like calories and then work out what the best approach is for you: high fat, low fat, high carb, low carb, and from there. But nutrition is a minefield, and I would almost say, like, when I apply my own
Well said.
mobility, it's like, what do I begin with? Because like I could literally spend hours, and you said 3 minutes there, and I'm interested, right, to elaborate on that, because like I could just do hundreds of exercises and that could take hours, but like like my body needs constant work. So in
Mhm,
terms of like time allotment and commitment to what we need to be doing, like
mhm.
how long should we be spending each day to mobility? And if you were to maybe narrow it down, this is probably a hard question, but like maybe if you were to narrow it down to maybe 3 to 5 exercises which everyone should be doing,
Mhm,
irrespective of that
mhm.
starting point, what would they include?
That's a great question. So to kind of answer the first half of that, I believe the first question was kind of like, what made you say just a few minutes, and what areas would you focus on to start with? Um, I would highly, highly, highly encourage people to begin with active movements. Most people start with static stretching, where they say, "Oh, my low back is tight. Let me do a forward fold and just hang there for 30 seconds." Oftentimes static stretching is going to pull on those connective tissues, pull on your ligaments, pull on your tendons, and cause a prolonged static stretch. I like to explain it like, if I were to grab a piece of plastic, right, and like a cellophane, and I were to pull on it for a while and hold it there, after I let it go, it'd be kind of wobbly and weak looking. That's really not the ideal look that we want for our connective tissues. So doing more active style movements where you're gently moving into that end range and backing off from it, gently moving into that end range and backing off from it, particularly for the beginners, is the best option to introduce mobility. You won't have the same level of soreness afterwards. If you're not doing it perfectly right, it doesn't matter as much because you're not just crushing your end ranges of motion. And also, most of the research says it's better for injury prevention than what static stretching is. So even if it is just 3 minutes, and the reason why I said that is because you can spend 3 minutes on a body part actively and get a ton of blood flow into the area and get up and be moving and feeling better if you're just looking for a single joint. Now, obviously, as I said earlier, the movement system's complex. We got to treat the whole body here. So there's much more to it as you get into it. But if you're working on hamstring tightness, just spending 3 minutes doing some active work for your hamstrings can be a complete game changer for the way you're moving throughout the day. So that's the reason why I had recommended that. The second question you asked was much harder. You said 3 to 5 different movements that you'd recommend that everybody does. Tough question there. I would encourage people to work proximal to distal. Here's what I mean by that. Proximal portions of the body are going to be closest to their insertion points. So if we're talking about the arm, the proximal joint would be the shoulder. If we're talking about the leg, the proximal joint would be the hip. And I would encourage people to take active ranges through a full range. So a good example of that, a car or a controlled articular rotation basically means you take the joint through a full range of motion. So a circular range of motion. In the hip, it looks like a gentle circle pattern for the hip. For the spine, it can oftentimes look like a segmental rolling or like a cat camel, cat cow kind of maneuver. And for the shoulder, it looks like a windmill pattern. Start with those 3 basics. You hit the 3 biggest portions of mobility in the body, the shoulders, the hips, and the spine, and you're off to a really, really good start to get your body moving. Caveat here, little asterisk, only if you're pain-free. Only if you're just looking to get moving better and getting more mobile. If you have a pathology of the shoulder, like a rotator cuff injury or an impingement injury, it's impossible to answer that question then. You need specific movement. But for the general person who's just like, man, I'm stiff, I'm going to the gym, I am not stretching, I am not doing mobility, I know that I'm going to get hurt in the future, how do I open my body up? That's really what I'd recommend. Controlled articular rotations, which is just gentle circular patterns that take a joint through its controlled active range of motion.
That's really
Did
interesting to
that
hear.
answer?
Yes, no, 100%. So you would, if you could, you would say shoulders, hips, and spine. Yeah, shoulders, hips, and spine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, just because they're the most crucial joints of the body, if you think about it. They're really what controls the rest of the body. So that's the reason why I had recommended that, although it's a hard question. You can answer that a lot of different ways.
Okay, so this is going to be an interesting question then. And do you think it's possible to become pain-free? And the reason why I asked that is because, I think of myself right now, I'm sat down and I've noticed since going into lockdown that I've been a lot more sore, my neck would get tighter because, again, previously I'd be in the gym working, standing up. So my whole posture and my whole, alignment is completely changed. And I've noticed a lot more okay, right, I'm tense in the neck. So given that, for example, with our mobile phones, we're hunched over with the neck and whatnot, do you think it's possible to become pain-free? Because I would say, if I was honest, I've never been pain-free for an extended period of time. Maybe for a week, 2 weeks, but for an extended period of time, absolutely not. So do you think it's possible to become pain-free? And if it is possible, does that come down to doing the basis every day?
Great question. So no, it's not possible. Here's why. Pain is a must. We see pain as a bad thing. If we didn't have pain, we would have no sense of what's good or bad for us. Pain is a must for the body. If you don't have pain, you put your hand on the searing iron and you don't know why your hand is burnt. The people who have syndromes that don't allow for their pain receptors to fire live a horrific life. It's super, super challenging. So pain is actually a very good thing. We see it as bad because in a terrible sense of you're in a car accident, you're in pain, of course, that's a terrible thing. But if we think about the very basics of what pain is, that's a receptor that's getting a nociceptor is what it's called inside the body that's firing an impulse back up to your brain that's saying, whoa, this is a external stimulus that is not good for us. You should be careful here. If we didn't have that, we'd be in big trouble. So it's not possible to live totally pain-free because you have to have that as a basic sense of life. Now, if we think about generally pain-free, meaning okay, yeah, obviously if anybody puts their hand in boiling water, that's painful, right? Of course, Ben. But if we think about musculoskeletal, the movement system being able to be generally freed up and pain-free, absolutely. And I would argue that the mindset behind the movement is equally as important as the movement. And most research shows that the connection between your thought processes on what your pain is like is just as important, if not more important, than the movements. And so to think about that, a good example is they'll run pain questionnaires, right, on back pain. And they'll say things like, does back pain affect your everyday life? Does back pain affect you when you're washing the dishes? Can you go to the grocery store without back pain? The people that answer yes to all of those almost never get better no matter what, right? Because they are associating everything in life with pain. So even if the actual painful stimulus is not there, their actual neuromuscular connection is saying, oh, when you bend over, you're in pain. So it's always going to be that stimulus. So if you have the ability of freeing your mind through whatever it is for you, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's personal development, maybe it's getting a coach to encourage you and tell you that you're going to be all right, you can get through this. Whatever that is the true basic first step, is recognizing I can break free from my pain. Pain is not my identity. If you can do that, you can get pain free. And again, not in the sense of actually eliminating all pain, but in the sense of my general movement patterns, I have pain free day to day. Outside of tiny little freak things, like I strained my groin like a few weeks ago when I was doing sprints just as a fluke. Outside of that, I mean, I haven't had pain in a while. It's been a long time since I've woken up and said, "Oh, I'm in pain." Like, it's been a long time, months and months and months.
That's an incredible answer. That wasn't the answer I was expecting. That's
Good.
blown me away. Yeah, 100%, man. Really, like, wow. Number one, just hearing then that actually, like, even yourself, someone who is Mr. Mobility can, strain the groin and whatnot. It's interesting to hear. And second of all, talking about sort of almost, would this be on the right terms of like the power of placebo in terms of pain? Because I've seen this, I've seen this within my own health. I've seen this within actually coaching a client to lose weight. Like, I've seen this in a number of different areas, but I never really thought about that for pain as well.
Absolutely. Eventually, inevitably, I should say, the mind is always the root of everything, right? Your mind really controls everything, whether it is your future self, your body sense, how you appear to yourself, your motivations, your actions, everything really is all through here. To me, people are always looking to rule out the placebo effect. That's madness. We should be ruling in the placebo effect. And here's what I mean. If I can give you a sugar pill that has a gram of sugar and water inside it, and I hand it to you and I say, Ollie, this is going to remove your back pain. You're not going to have a single sense of back pain for the rest of your life. And you take it and you feel amazing. And you're like, oh my gosh, Dr. Ben saved me. Why would I not want that for you? Why would I try to rule that out and tell you, no, this is a fake pill? Of course I should be allowing for that. Now, do I do that in my practice? No, I give you the things with research behind them, but I'll be constantly encouraging you to know, hey, this is going to benefit you. If you do this, we can get you to your goals. We can get you back to running. I can get you to do that Spartan race. I can get you to do that back squat again. And that is equally as important as the actual movements themselves. So to me, always look to rule in the placebo effect, because the mind can do wonderful things for helping you treat your body outside of the more tangible stuff.
Yeah, and what came to mind then was the whole saying of like, you're almost giving people what they want before telling them what they need. And if you're like giving them the pill, fantastic. But then like, I would certainly do this in relation to my coaching, in the sense of like, the buzzword may be toning, and we know that we can't really tone a muscle, but I'm gonna be like, right, we're gonna tone your muscles.
We're gonna tone, right?
You're not really gonna tone, but you're gonna burn body fat and build muscle, like that sort of thing. So it is interesting, that's for sure. You touched on briefly there, you mentioned breath work, meditation. I'd be interested to know, outside of maybe mobility then, what would some of your self-care practices look like?
I have a pretty strict routine ritual for treating my body. Each morning that I wake up, I fill a tall glass of alkaline water. I put a little bit of pink Himalayan salt and some lemon in it. I sit in front of the sun as it rises, and I do some breath work, particularly a lot of Wim Hof breathing. I'll do traditional style box breathing. So 3 to 5 second count in, 3 to 5 second hold, 3 to 5 second exert, 3 to 5 second hold, to kind of bring my mind into the meditative state and kind of ease myself. This is weird, but what I picture is breathing literally in positive energy. And as I breathe out, I literally picture in my head, like, oh, the stress of all these things you need to do today is just falling out of you. Like those 19 calls with the client programs you need to make just disappearing. The taxes you're just going out of, like it just like melts away, and then I'll jump into like a Wim Hof style breath, which is diaphragmatic. Like, okay, let's jolt that nervous system. Let's really get some endorphins pumping here, and people do like rounds of Wim Hof. I don't know how they do it. I get through like 40 seconds of Wim Hof and I am like at a 10. So that's usually my ritual. And then I'll do some gentle mobility work. And in the mornings, it's not like a big long routine or like this specific thing. It's like very much a flow. It's a gentle flow for my body of a few minutes. And it's not necessarily for mobility. It's to get blood flow in my body moving to energize me for the day. And again, everything in front of morning light, everything in front of morning light. Like, as long as it's nice enough, I'll be shirtless in some shorts. I don't care if my neighbors think I'm a weirdo. I'm doing it, man, to get as much sunshine on my body as I can. And that's kind of how every single morning looks for me, barring any weird exceptions.
Very good. Yeah. And just for context to listeners, so Ben is in Florida. You wouldn't really get away with that over here in Ireland. It's too cold.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Wim Hof might argue with you there.
Oh, yes.
Cold exposure is his thing. And I've done plenty of cold exposure stuff for treating my body as well. And I do like it. Maybe not to the extent Wim Hof, but I do like it. I think it's definitely helpful.
On the note of cold exposure, in relation to sort of, general recovery practices, hot or cold, and which is applied to what circumstance?
Great question. Probably like one of the number one questions I get, right? Should I ice this or should I put heat on it? It's never a set answer, almost never. If we think about the inflammatory process, right? In certain instances, you're going to want to decrease that inflammatory process. And in certain instances, you are not going to want to decrease it. Here's a good example of that. You sprain your ankle, you roll it, it's swelling up like a balloon. You're looking down at it. Your foot looks like Mickey Mouse. You're like, okay, what do I do, right? You need to walk home. Okay, that's a great instance of when you want to put some ice on this so that way it decreases how much swelling we have to the area. Vasoconstricts, right? The idea behind ice is that it actually takes your arterioles, the actual arteries, and it makes them skinnier, vasoconstriction, which decreases how much blood and fluid goes to the area, decreases the inflammatory process, basically. Great idea, right? But if you just bumped your shoulder and you have a little bit of swelling inside your shoulder for a day, allow for that inflammatory process to take place. That's your body's way of providing it with extra white blood cells, providing it with some extra blood flow, which is needed for recovery. It holds all the nutrients for recovery. And if it's not really bothersome or painful for you, allow for that process to take place. But if you're super swollen and the pressure is the big thing, pressure builds inside the joint from the swelling, and then it causes pain. Presses on your nerve endings, pinches on the tendons, decreases the amount of movement you have. Great idea to utilize some ice, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, just to allow for a decrease in pain modulation as well as inflammatory modulation. When we're thinking about using heat, on the other hand, this is for vasodilation, increasing the amount of blood flow that's provided to an area, particularly useful for something like a muscle spasm or something like a tighter muscle. If you are going through a rehabilitation process and your range of motion is limited, right? You have been working on your quad for weeks and it's just tight because they had you in that, extension brace after your surgery procedure. Great idea to use a little bit of heat on the quad itself before you get into some stretching to help decrease pain, increase blood flow, and improve your recovery. Or the most common one, back pain, right? If you just have general soreness in your back, whatever feels best for you is great. Inevitably, these are modalities, meaning they are an adjunct piece of the puzzle that helps modulate your pain. They are not a fix. They are a crutch. They should be used like a brace where you use it for a short period of time and get away from it. And without that, you get yourself in trouble where you rely on it. Oh, I need my hot pack for my back to get out of bed. Now we're in trouble, right? Now we're talking about that process of the brain, like we discussed before, where it is associating everything with pain. Now that's bad news. Now we really got to break that mindset habit process. You got to, get through that. But in terms of the general question, ice or heat really depends. But if you're looking to decrease inflammation in the short term, ice is great. If you're looking to provide some extra blood flow and relax a muscle, you just have some general soreness, heat is great.
That's really interesting to know. This, by the way, guys, like I'm learning as well. And this is the most important thing. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get Ben onto the podcast today, is because even I'm a student of learning as well. And I'm constantly a student of learning, as I'm sure Ben is as well.
Mhm.
Ben, so, when I was like, obviously, I'm a massive fan of your page, and I'm going to actively promote the listeners to go and follow your page. In fact, what I want you to
Appreciate
do
it,
is
man.
to stop this podcast right now and then go over to Ben's page and follow, because trust me,
Love
Ben
it.
will help you become pain-free, or nearly pain-free, as we've outlined. And but I was interested to learn, when I was doing my homework for the podcast, I saw how you were talking about how you left the sort of clinic practice and
Mhm.
to sort of move online. And I'd love for you to share with the listeners maybe why that is, and also how your work works online, because I've had this God knows how many times. Like, how does personal training work online, Ollie? Right? And it
Yeah,
does
yeah,
work. It works really well.
yeah, yeah.
So I can answer it
Absolutely.
in relation to what I do, but in relation to mobility and all of those sorts of related things, how do you help people online? And tell us
Yeah.
about your story.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a super in-depth question. And I'll try to keep it brief and hit the highlight points so I don't talk everybody's ear off. Really, when I first became a clinician, it was all about how can I learn as much as I can to help as many people as possible. And in order to be able to get to the point where I can say, okay, I can become a business owner through this, and then I can really increase my reach and assisting more people. And when I came down as a clinician, I quickly was thrown into a situation that was not ideal. Um, I was treating 2, 3, 4 different patients at a given time, sometimes more. Everything is based off of your insurance carrier, how much, what your copay is, how much you can afford. It really had nothing to do with helping the patients. But unfortunately, I kind of fell victim to that system because I wanted to be a good employee and I wanted to move up in the ranks, quote unquote. And I did that very quickly. I started to manage a clinic, and then I started to manage another clinic, and then I started to manage a few clinics. And I was doing what everybody thought was, okay, great job. You're doing it awesome. But I was also turning into this clinician I never wanted to be. As people would walk into the door, I'd be calculating in my head, like, what's this person's insurance carrier? Do I need to get this person out quickly? Do I need to keep them for long? How much attention should I be giving them? It really had nothing to do with their actual ailment. And I had like a pivoting moment where I had a patient, a young patient, walk into my office, a lady, and she was complaining about her care, rightfully so. And I remember looking over at her being like, I'm her head of care. I'm the doctor who's responsible for rehabilitating her, and I don't even know her name. I don't know what her condition is. I have no idea. And it like hit me for a second, like, whoa, what are you doing here? This is not what you wanted at all. In fact, you've become exactly the opposite of what you wanted. Um, and so I recognized I had to take a step back. And I quickly was like, okay, how can I redefine myself? How can I redefine what my career is, and build something of what I really want is to help broader range of people. And when it came down to it, everything was restricted based on insurance. The reason why we had to do this is because insurance increased the amount of people that need to be seen, but decreased how much they're willing to pay for it. So now, rather than seeing one patient getting paid X dollars, you see 3 patients and are getting paid X dollars minus some. So you can't, it's physically impossible. All these clinics have to either decide we only take big insurance carriers that pay well, and we exclude people, which is not good, or you have to see massive amounts of patients. And that's the world of physical therapy today, particularly in the United States. So I was like, how can I break this mold? So I quit cold turkey. I really had no idea what I was doing. I quit. I tried to figure out how to see patients cash based in person, but that was super hard to do. And it costs a lot of money. Let's be frank. For me to drive 30 minutes to your house, see you for a 45-minute session, and drive a half hour back home, it's not going to be $25, right? It's going to be a fairly hard chunk of change. So I was running the same thing. People couldn't afford it. And that's quickly when it became, how can I reach a broader audience? And that's really when I put a ton of focus through social media, and things really have grown. And now the outreach has become, quite large, where I'm, reaching over 1 million people a week. And now it's like, wow, okay, I'm helping a huge amount of people. And that's kind of how that process went for me. And the real reason of why I do what I do is I'm trying to break free from the mold of insurance defining the patient and treating the individual for their true needs, barring no restrictions. I want to make it affordable for every individual. And the long-term thought process behind what I'm doing here is, if I can create enough individuals to do what I do, enough physical therapists, chiropractors, personal trainers, athletic trainers that completely break free from any reliance on insurance and provide a product that's solely on their own, insurance can no longer dictate what it costs. The market and what your value will dictate what it costs. And then you have a free healthcare system to all, because everybody can get healthcare. It's just based on what your needs are and who you want to find to do it for you. If you want to get the high top tier person, okay, great, pay for it, right? So in that case, you're able to really help a broad amount of people and you're not restricted. So that's the real overall goal behind what I want to do. I want to unchain the healthcare system from the limitations of of insurance. But for now, it's just me and a few other people, helping people online. And I guess that kind of leads into your next question, but I should probably ask, if you had anything else on that topic before I get to how I treat online.
No, I'll just say it really resonates. I'm a personal trainer by job, but, since, just before the whole lockdown situation, I moved online for the purpose of, like, personal training is probably completely different, but like the limitation with personal training is I'm only seeing that client for 1 hour a week. And I know in
Uh-huh.
my heart, like, to help someone make a radical change, to make someone get that transformation, they need more than 1 hour a week. So
Oh
what I
yeah.
was like, right, what do people need? Right, they need more support, they need more guidance, they need more structure, more accountability. And then I aligned it with my values of my health and my happiness, with my health and my happiness after cancer and all these different things. And I was like, right, this is what I'm gonna do. And like, it's funny because I'm sure you'll agree, when you made that change, despite the challenge and the difficulty of the setting it up and building it from scratch, you absolutely love it, and you wouldn't
I
change
love
it
it.
for the world. Like, and it's just the
Nothing.
most like the I don't call any of this work. That is passion, and when it's
Yep.
aligned with a strong purpose, honestly, that's the goal in life, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just seeing your excitement about being able to talk about your journey just in 5 seconds there really shows that you're doing what you want to do. Like Steve Jobs says, like, if you chase your passion, you'll never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah.
And you're in alignment if you're getting pulled, not pushed, right? If you feel like you're getting pushed, you're probably going down the wrong area. If you feel like you're getting pulled, you're probably going to the right area, because you're constantly like, I want to go to that. But if you feel like you're getting pushed down the wrong path, like herded like cattle, you should probably step away and check for yourself, is this really what I want to do?
Oh, it's
Right?
a good analogy, and I'm a man of analogies.
Good. I hope you like
But
it. But
the thing in a
go ahead.
service based, we work in service based industries, and you'll know
Yeah.
this yourself. Like, it is so fulfilling when a patient messages you and says, "Ben, you got rid of my back pain," right? Like that. So
Yeah. Oh, best.
when they've been crippled with it for God knows how many years, and like that's why we do what we do. So going
Mhm.
back to, I went on a tangent there, but like going back to the question of like, how do you treat people online,
Mhm.
as an online DPT? So
Good question. Good question. So, first off, it was a good tangent. Don't worry, that's good. But when we think about physical therapy, quite literally, the word is physical. People assume you need to be in person, or if you're outside of the United States, physiotherapy, right? Same thing. You're thinking and assuming my hands are going to be on the patient. If you genuinely look at the research, like you actually take a look at what the research shows, manual therapy is as good as placebo. It is very, very, very much an option in your care. Now, again, I do want to put a caveat and asterisk. There's a very important place for it. There's a very important place for it, particularly in individuals that do have that high pain condition, something that is known as a limitation, and whether it's in their brain or in their body, they're experiencing pain, and a lot of times it can be alleviated with manual care. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. But that's not what's treating you. That's not what's making the difference. That's not what's allowing for you to move better. If we think about getting somebody to go from an ACL tear to being able to run again, do you think that that's going to be done through me with my hands? Of course not. It's going to be through the movements that you take them through. Now, in the beginning stages of post-operative, I don't see patients. You should be in person. You should be in person to be able to have a person put their hand on that knee and say to themselves, okay, let me do a Lockman's test and make sure that this ACL is holding strong. And let me get a joint feel for that patient. But let's say you're 2 months later, your insurance cuts out and says to you, I'm not letting you see a physical therapist anymore. And now you just got outside your brace. You could barely do a squat. And they're telling you, all right, good luck. Time to get back to tennis. How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? And that's really where the online physical therapy steps in. And more than anything, what I provide for people is corrective exercise recommendations. That's really what I'm doing for people. I'm showing people, if I get onto a call with you and we overview your issues, your conditions, and I get a basic understanding of who you are and what your past medical history is, I can begin to create and mold a program for you that over the course of several weeks is going to dramatically improve your function. It's going to take you from walking with a limp to getting back to a 5K race. It's going to take you from back pain with a basic squat to deadlifting 300 pounds again. And it's that slow corrective exercise protocol that's really what I provide for people. Now, a big advantage is I do have that background in medicine and being able to say, okay, if you're experiencing anterior shoulder pain with a movement, what kind of a modification do I need to make there? And that's another big component behind what I provide people is adjustments and modifications to their current routines to allow for them to work within a pain-free range of motion. So in the most basic sense, online physical therapy looks like an evaluation call where I make sure you qualify to be seen, because not everybody can be seen. A lot of people can be seen, but not everybody. Then seeing a movement screening from you, getting you to go for a jog and videotape it, doing a squat and videotaping it, do a deadlift and videotape it, maybe just stand and let me assess your posture, right? And I'll take those and kind of diagnose them and then begin to create a program that's very moldable and adjustable, very customized over the course of time that adjusts to improve your function. And regular calls and communication is so crucial. If you're not communicating with me, I'm never going to be able to assist you. So that communication process over the course of time is very, very, very integral and important as well. But inevitably, it's all about providing corrective exercises to allow for improved movement and function. And that's the game changer for people.
Dude, I love it. Absolutely love it. And hopefully you'll get a few inquiries after this podcast, including one from myself, because it's something we all need.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key part is, guys, if you are not adopting some form of mobility routine, whether it's the free exercises, 3 minutes, as Ben said, then you're going to continue to live in pain, whether that's placebo or not. And it's about just taking that action. And again, like as Ben said, it's not about doing hours and hours. It's just starting with, the spine, the hips, the shoulders, those basics and those fundamentals. Mm-hmm. Ben, just before I ask my last question, where can, if they haven't checked you out already, where can the listeners find you online?
The best place to get to me is through my Instagram, Benjamin Torres, DPT. Benjamin spelled like you'd always think, Torres spelled Torres, DPT as in Doctor of Physical Therapy, or I guess hashtag mobility man or whatever you called me. The hashtag the mobility man. I'm gonna start hashtagging out everything now. But that's the best place to find me. Yeah. I love that. That'd be great. Yeah. I'll give you 10%.
So on to my last question then. What is the one thing that we can do that will have the biggest impact on our health and happiness?
Wow. Talk about a great question, Ollie. Let me make sure I have it right because I know this is important. What is the one thing that can have the greatest impact on our health and our happiness? I think that I would step away from physical therapy to answer this question. And I think the real answer is to find your calling. And it does not mean like this epiphany moment where it's like, oh my gosh, I've known it my whole life. This is what I need to do. No, definitely not. It should just be over the course of time, doing the things that you genuinely enjoy doing and make that a life for yourself. I heard something the other day. Actually, I think it was Alan Watts, who's kind of a crazy thinker guy. But Alan Watts said, if you go on through life doing what you don't want to do to earn money to continue to do what you don't want to do, you're actually in a complete unfulfilling process. But if you just go about doing what you enjoy doing, inevitably you'll get quite good at it, and other people will want to know how you got good at it, and you can create an income for yourself through that. And someday you'll even become a master, and then you can create a great amount of income for yourself. So money aside, decide what gets you burning up and passionate. And if that's a tough question for you, what do you bring up at the dinner table when nobody asks? Right? Like, what do you talk to people about when people didn't even ask you about it? Like, what do you go up and bring conversation about that like nobody even asked about? Is it like Game of Thrones? Is it video games? Is it like fitness? Is it nutrition? Is it mobility? I don't know. What is it? And whatever that is what your passion is. And start to figure out how you can create and cultivate the best version of yourself through that. And inevitably, that creative process will bring about great opportunities to you. So I would say stepping away from physical therapy, figure out what's pulling you, what is your calling, and really pursue that in life. That'll bring you both health and happiness.
2 words, mic drop.
Well, I hope it was a good answer. Ollie, man, I'm really, really, really glad that you brought me on this podcast. And I'm really glad that we're connected.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Guys, do check out this man's work. Until next time, stay healthy, be happy.